Hi, this is Dave. Welcome to my channel. A few days ago, I released a video on Google. It was part one on kind of the bull case on Google going forward. However, in the past few days, as I've been researching for part two of this video, I've been looking at more of the risk factors for Google, and my views on Google have changed over the past few days. And this is part of the process of researching and investing in companies. The big problem with Google and with Amazon and Facebook and some others going forward is the possible antitrust action the governments might take against these companies. In this video, I'm going to give kind of an overview on some of the risks I see, and also I'm going to be answering some questions regarding Google from some viewers. Hope you enjoy the video. Thanks. All right, so we have a possible antitrust problem here with Google and Facebook and Amazon and even possibly Apple. And a lot of times people tend to just take one angle. They say, oh, this is just a minor risk, forget it, it's not that important. On the other side, people say, oh my gosh, this is a huge risk and this is going to wipe out all the companies. And I think there's something where there's validity in both sides. However, we need a balanced look and we need to take a deeper dive into this issue. All right, so this is kind of a first look at this issue. Now going forward, I think there could be much bigger kind of deeper analysis regarding this. So anyways, I want you guys to do your own research regarding this issue as well. All right, so a couple days ago, Wall Street Journal on Friday released an article saying the Justice Department and state attorney generals are likely to bring antitrust lawsuits against Google. Now, this isn't the first time we've heard about this, and this was kind of the number one risk factor that I shared in my previous video on Google. However, this story was actually kind of new in the sense that it's saying that the Justice Department is starting to kind of wrap up their investigation and they are going to proceed with antitrust action or a lawsuit. Further, they're looking to get the state attorney generals on board, and 48 of them have already initiated their investigations last year. So let's take a deeper look into what this story is all about. So the Wall Street Journal is saying that the Justice Department and state attorneys will likely file antitrust lawsuits. And the Justice Department might bring a case as soon as this summer. So it's already like May, right? So June, July, August, maybe within 2 or 3 months. So this is actually coming up pretty soon. And they're saying that at least some attorney generals are likely to file a case probably in the fall, or they could join together in the Justice Departments. They're saying that no final decisions have been made, and it's unclear whether an agreement can be reached, to settle this before it goes to court. Now, there's a lot of open factors here, and they bring a different set of risks. This lawsuit could be among the most significant antitrust cases in U.S. history, alongside the government's antitrust case against Microsoft in the 1990s. And there could be a whole host of different outcomes for Google, but also for some of these other companies that are being investigated. It could be a change of business practices, or it could be a breakup of the company. All right, the Wall Street Journal also said that last June they reported, the Justice Department was launching an antitrust investigation of Google. And then a couple months later, they expanded their antitrust investigation to Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Google. So they're investigating basically the big tech giants, right? And these companies, in a lot of ways, have amazing business models, have great revenue, and they're being investigated for different parts of their business. And we're going to look into some of the risks more. All right, the New York Times later on Friday as well came up with an article saying that collaborating basically the Wall Street Journal's article saying that, this is going to be joined perhaps with the Justice Department and the state attorneys. Google controls around 90% of the web searches globally. And in the past, the U.S. had investigated, let's say from the FTC, and Google didn't face any charges, but this time around it could be different. All right, let's take a deeper look and look at this risk factor from different angles. Here we have big tech, or these big tech giants, as targets. And back in July 23rd, 2019, the U.S. Department of Justice announced they're investigating the big four tech companies, Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon. And I think over the past year, as this investigation has continued, there's actually increased political risk because the political environment in the US is becoming more polarized, right, and more extreme in different ways. A few things. First, there's growing vitriol, or actually not just dissatisfaction, but not just complaining, but actually like real hate toward billionaires and to some of the big tech. Further, you've got a politics of scapegoating, right? On both sides of the aisle, people are scapegoating different people or groups of people or companies for problems that the whole country is facing. And this big tech is becoming one of the scapegoats and one of the main scapegoats. And then you've got a growing ideological movement against big tech. For example, recently Elon Musk replied to Robert Reich as an attack. And basically, this guy, Robert Reich, he's out of Berkeley. He's a professor. He used to be, I think, the Secretary of Labor under Clinton. But he's been preaching a concept or ideology called socialism for the rich and harsh capitalism for the rest. And what he's saying is that for the rich, he's claiming that it's socialism because the government keeps on bailing out the rich, right? These big companies, and these rich people have all their money, right, in these companies, and they're getting bailed out, and the rich don't have to worry. But for the rest of the people, the working class, he calls it harsh capitalism because they're not getting bailed out or as much as perhaps the rich. And he's targeting a lot of the billionaires. He's targeting a lot of the big tech as part of the big problems and the corruption that supports big tech. And this movement, or these types of ideological movements, are gaining steam in the US. And that's what makes this whole antitrust action or risk actually even greater than just a year ago. All right. In the past few months, we've been hit with the worldwide pandemic. And you would think that in this pandemic, big tech gets more goodwill because, for example, people rely on Amazon more, or they rely on Google and YouTube. And you would think that, oh, these antitrust lawsuits would just be tossed out, or people wouldn't want them to happen. However, I think in different ways, this whole crisis has highlighted some of the income disparity even more, right? You have Apple, you have Google, you have Facebook, you have Amazon, all these companies, right, going back to close to their all-time highs. And you're starting to see, like, with this pandemic, not all people are being hit equally, right? Those who are associated with tech, who have incomes, high incomes with that type of economy, are doing pretty well, right? And so I think it highlights the income disparity and actually could increase the discontentment. And then it just not only increases the discontentment for, the income inequality, but these extreme ideologies, right, on both sides. And lastly, I think big tech becomes an easy target because they have extremely high market caps, right? You have these companies, $1 trillion or more in market cap, and they really do have, in some ways, like great power, and they look like monopolistic powers, right? Where they control search, or they control video, or they control social networking, or control entire operating systems, right, on mobile devices. And so all of these issues pose, I think, greater risks in some ways. All right, and this is actually another greater risk, is big tech is becoming something where both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, are starting to agree on that there needs to be like more regulation on this. And Republicans on their side can deflect the blame of some issues toward big tech, and Democrats can appease some of the anger, right, of some of the movements under, right, their side. And it makes sense, right, for the Democrats and the Republicans in some ways, right, to kind of scapegoat big tech. I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm saying this is where the trends seem to be headed. So here's a summary of some of the risks for antitrust action. Google, Amazon, and Facebook, I think, are at a high risk of antitrust action, even more so than ever before because of the political risks at hand. And these risks can fluctuate according to the political environment. I think it's possible, like going into election season, right, with the presidential election coming up, it's possible this could be a big issue. And the big tech could kind of be the sacrifice on the altar, right? And the current government can say, hey, look what we're doing to kind of like, deal with income inequality by punishing certain big companies. All right, there's different scenarios now, and I think it's easy to oversimplify and minimize all this stuff, but a lot of this stuff really is up in the air, meaning there's so many factors that we don't know about. And this is actually just kind of a first look, kind of an introduction that I want to share. I think scenario one, in my own opinion, is there could be big fines. Now, Google already has $120 billion in cash. Facebook has $55 billion and Amazon has $55 billion cash on hand. So with all of this cash on hand, it makes it so they can handle huge one-time fees pretty easily, right? So even if they're fined like 30, 40, 50 billion dollars or something, it's like, sure, they use up a bunch of their cash, but these companies are bringing in more cash, right? Like Google, I shared in my last video, they had a net income of $34 billion, right, just last year. So if they have to pay out $34 billion, it almost means nothing to them. It's just 1 year's of profit and they can move on. So this is actually the best case scenario for these companies, right, to get hit with big fines and then to move on. However, this might not be as simple as that. Scenario 2 is breaking up these companies or breaking up parts of these companies. Now with Google, it's possible the government separates, right, Google into search and cloud, YouTube and Android. It could be 2 or 3 companies at the end up, and by separating these companies, then they don't exercise kind of like the dominance, right, that they do when they're all combined together. For example, if Android is a separate company and they have to open up, right, a lot of the access to services and to search and whatever to as many companies as possible, it becomes much more of a neutral field. Same thing with YouTube. Facebook can be separated into Facebook and Instagram and maybe WhatsApp as well, right? They're looking into kind of reversing some of the previous acquisitions with Facebook. And with Apple, you're looking at possibility of, the App Store or iTunes or some of the parts of Apple being spun out, probably maybe as a separate entity. All right, now with breaking up, some people are saying like this isn't that big of a deal, right? Because maybe some of these assets will be worth even more as a separate asset. Like imagine how much YouTube will be worth separately, right? So you can invest in Google search, or you can invest in YouTube, or you can invest in Android. And yeah, that's actually a reality. I mean, these companies have real assets that even if you break it up, it's still worth a lot. For example, Facebook, Instagram, like how much is Instagram worth, right? And they have Facebook and WhatsApp and other things. And so there's inherent value in these companies, even if you break it up. And so in this kind of risk factor, there is some issues, but however, it's not like these companies are going to go to zero or going to lose like over half their value just by being broken up. All right, scenario number 3 is tough restrictions. It's possible that the government adds on tough restrictions, tough rules, and makes it difficult for some of these companies to make as much money as they did before, or to continue their growth and profit growth rate going forward. Now, I think this is actually perhaps one of the biggest risk factors. For example, with Google, the government could somehow limit how search ads are shown. It could restrict Android to be more neutral, and could separate Google and YouTube even more. And in some ways, it could really hit Google's ability to grow their profit at the same rate as they did before going forward. And this could affect, in return, the multiple that investors give for these type of companies. Second, with Facebook, right, a lot of cross-targeting could be limited across their apps. Let's say the connection between Facebook and Instagram. Also, there are different parts. Let's say Facebook, let's say that the government might start to open up like their social graph and other parts where other apps and other services can use them. And lastly, with Amazon, you could have the government to shut down their whole white labeling area, where Amazon Basics and all these brands that Amazon is coming up with, and this whole business kind of growth that Amazon is finding and experiencing in white labeling could be shut down by the government. That's just one area as well. All right, here's my personal take on all this right now, and my view can change actually day to day and month to month, and that's what I call, I think, trusting the process. As you invest, as you go deeper and deeper into these companies, have some type of objective analysis, try to take the emotions out and look at different angles, you learn different things about different companies and you adjust your investment kind of philosophies. So personally, I own some shares in Google, Facebook, and Amazon, right? I purchased these shares in March of this year. Currently, these companies actually make up a very small portion of my portfolio at the moment in terms of percentage, right, of my overall portfolio. And because of these risks, I might actually lower my exposure of some of these companies, or all of them actually. And I'll continue to monitor the situation and I'll continue to reassess, right, what's going on. Personally, on kind of like the big note here is I don't like it when there's unknown in regards to government action, right? Like if there's anything out there that can really just like suck life out of a company, it's government action. I mean, the government is legitimately in the whole authority structure above these companies, right? The government is the main player that can really affect in a fundamental and existential way the future of these companies. And when the risk is so unknown, right, that's something that I'm very hesitant about because it's an unknown that I can't control and I don't know, it's hard to get my grasp on exactly what's going to happen. So in that regard, it might be likely I lower my exposure to these companies going forward. All right, what I want to do right now is I want to go ahead and dive into some viewer questions off of Twitter and YouTube. All right, the first question comes from Sean NST from Twitter, and he replies to my Hey Dave 7 account. It says, what are Google's growth opportunities? Yeah, as I shared in my previous video, the main kind of generational products of Google, right, are Google Search, you have YouTube, and then you have Android. And these generational products have just infiltrated, right, culture and society and personal lives and business lives so greatly. And I still believe they have a great road ahead in terms of monetizing and adding value to people's lives. And they also have Google Cloud and a lot of other ventures and services that Google has going forward. All right, next question is Husky Dog. What's the difference between Class A and Class C stock? Which is a better investment? Now, Class A, I think, has the voting rights and Class C doesn't, right? Class A is GOOGL and Class C is GOOG. And there's also a Class B that you can't, right, have, which is basically Larry and Sergey's like, voting 10x voting rights shares, right? In my opinion, if you have a choice between investing in GOOGL or GOOG, it doesn't really matter because with Google, your voting rights don't matter. Larry and Sergey have all of the voting rights. They control the company. You're just a shareholder along for the ride. So in my opinion, yeah, don't buy Google for the voting rights. All right, Ujwal Bhutta says, which one would you choose between Facebook and Google for long term? Both get most money from ads. Facebook is growing faster. Each one has some long-term optional value. For example, Google's leader in AI and Facebook has unmatched user base. AI will become commodity. Facebook's execution is more aggressive. Yeah, like I think Facebook has an amazing business model. I mean, these two are the juggernauts, right, in the advertising business. Like if you advertise online, like Facebook and their targeted advertising, but also Google, like these two are the main places that you're going to go likely, right, to advertise. And they're just raking in billions and billions of dollars, right? I shared how Google search is $100 billion a year business, right? And that's just mind-boggling, right? And YouTube and their ads are just growing like crazy. And Facebook is the same thing. I think it comes out to kind of first my personal preference. I think Google is a little bit more diversified with Android and with YouTube. I personally like YouTube over Instagram. Some other people, they're into Instagram, right? And they think Facebook is the way to go. I personally kind of like have some reservations with Facebook's kind of culture and style going forward. But that said, I do own some Facebook. I don't know what I'm going to do with it going forward as well. All right. Next is, why is Google so damn boring and unimaginative in the past decade? Feels like Gmail was their last great idea. I think this is actually a misconception in some ways, right? Because Google has been just executing like crazy with YouTube. Like think about what they've done and what a juggernaut YouTube has become. And also with Android, right? Android has just grown like tremendously. And you think that, oh, Android is boring, and it is boring in a sense, but it's like, imagine like how much resources and energy go into, right, supporting an operating system that's used by billions of people. Google search, I think, is tough. Like I feel like they've been trying to milk the money out of Google search by kind of making the search results look closer and closer to that, or making the ads, right, looking closer and closer to the search results. And as a result, it's forcing companies to buy ads off of their own name, right, own business name. And I think that's causing a lot of discontent, and it's not helping Google's case in these antitrust actions. But I think, Google, just keeping 3 generational products, right, online and growing Google Cloud. If you look at Google Cloud and what they're doing is actually quite impressive as well. All right, next, Sandeep says questions. Google's fintech plan or financial tech plan approach pros and cons, assets shortfalls versus incumbents, PayPal, Square, as well as Apple Pay. Yeah, I mean, Google Pay has been kind of like lackluster. I think really Apple and Google need to get into the peer-to-peer and the viral kind of nature of that stuff, right? Venmo and Square, Cash App, right, really has taken advantage of that. And then you use that kind of as a hedge or as a base, right, to branch off into more services. I think that's the way to go. B is lack of Facebook type social media offering. Should they consider Twitter? Yeah, like Google, I think probably their biggest mistake was just their inability to execute in social media, right? I mean, YouTube is their big property, but they weren't able to really get into, right, the whole Facebook or Instagram or even messaging, right? And I think Google probably should have had a better shot at it or continued with it. Twitter acquisition, I shared that online, but already it seems like Google is growing so big, it's just gonna like put them more in risk with antitrust action. C is risk of ad money to Amazon, which has become the Google of product search. Yeah, I mean, Amazon is growing with product search. And if you talk to people inside Google, they recognize Amazon as a big competitor because people go to Amazon to search for the products, more so than Google. Google still, you go to, search for a lot of things as well. But yeah, Amazon is... all of these tech companies are starting to collide, more and more. Apple and Amazon and Google and Facebook. And you'll start to see this because they're already $1 trillion market cap companies having difficult time trying to find more big markets, right? And they're going to collide more and more. All right, I'm going to go on to some more questions here. 000 says, Google owns DeepMind and a stake in SpaceX. What's the value of these stakes? Yeah, Google bought DeepMind, which is an AI company based in the UK. So they own the company outright. With SpaceX, Google does own a portion of SpaceX. I think they invested $1 billion, right, to when they were when SpaceX was getting like Starlink started. And I think as a result, I think at that time SpaceX was valued probably around $20 billion or so, maybe a little bit more. So Google's kind of cut was probably 5% or less, and over time they've been diluted, right, as SpaceX has raised money. So I would imagine Google's share of SpaceX is less than 3%. So it's not a big cut of SpaceX. All right, next question is from Jay Karagma, 29. Who gets broken up first, Google or Amazon or Facebook, right? Who knows? I mean, this is the big question of antitrust action, and this is the question going forward, and it's going to be an interesting summer. And these antitrust action lawsuits, man, they can take a long time, right? And it can be a big distraction going forward, and there could be a lot of manipulation in the media and in the stock price, so just heads up. All right, Contrarian says, as an investor, do you discount the stock when you have virtually no voting power due to the different class structures? Or does it not matter for small investors? It just feels wrong, to be honest. Yeah, some of these companies, how they got set up in the beginning, like Facebook and Google, you just don't have much voting rights or control. And you just really have to, you're investing to just trust and support the founders, right? Or the people who control the company. All right, Mohan Chowdhury says, will Waymo be the Android for car makers to compete with Tesla? Yeah, this is probably the hope and the dream of Waymo in some ways, right? To give kind of the operating system to compete, right, against, let's say, a company like Tesla. However, Tesla is light years ahead with data and with their approach with neural nets. I think unless Waymo does a radical shift in their approach, gets rid of their LiDAR and really goes all in with neural nets and data, Waymo is not going to be second place unless they do that. And they could, right? They raised a bunch of money. Google is adept, and they've got some smart people, and it's yet to be seen. All right, Nuclear Nick Dev says, could you discuss how GCP or Google Cloud is faring against AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, and Azure, which is Microsoft's, right, cloud services, and why? Yeah, in my opinion, a lot of people think like, oh, this is a winner-take-all market, but I think actually it's different because cloud services is such a huge business, right? I mean, Amazon is, in my opinion, the leader just because not just their head start, their approach is like they have really good cloud services, right? I use a lot of them for my business, and Azure also is kind of more on the enterprise side. But they're gaining steam. Like a lot of people I know in the software world use Azure too. Now, Google Cloud, they've got some interesting stuff coming up, and they're growing, and it's for good reason, right? I think a lot of Google's angle with cloud tends to be with like machine learning or big data, and they have some great services. They have some great pricing. I actually think these three companies and even other companies can continue to grow in the cloud service field. So I definitely think this is a huge market, and that's why these companies are experiencing like 50% like year-over-year growth on some of these, like, on their cloud services. Some of these companies, it's because there's huge, immense opportunity. All right, Jerry Quo says, how do you view the whole targeting ad market, as many people argue Google's ad revenue is approaching its limit on its current market share, and how to value Google's market cap as it owns many different platforms like Search, YouTube, Android, Chrome, Gmail, Waymo, etc.? Yeah, I talked about the valuation approach in my first video, kind of how to look at the profit kind of earnings ratio. In terms of, seeing a limit in Google's kind of revenue, I think YouTube, actually, in my opinion, is still getting started in terms of revenue and monetization. I think the future is just so immense, just because I think you can monetize it a lot more, perhaps 5 or 10 times more in the next 5 or 10 years at least. With Google search, I think, for Google just to kind of do what they're doing with kind of like, making their search ads like look so similar to results, it just shows me maybe Google is reaching some type of limits in terms of how fast they can grow their search revenue. Just my opinion. All right, next question is, can DeepMind generate huge revenue unexpectedly when applying AI tech commercially? What if they focus on licensing or market trading instead of Go and StarCraft 2? Yeah, I think Google is extremely focused. I don't think they'll do like market trading, stock trading, or anything like that, or like StarCraft or gaming. I think their two priorities is, number one, they want to integrate, right, their AI, machine learning, and deep learning into all of their products and services to increase its effectiveness, increase its value, and increase their revenue over time. I think additionally, Google wants to be able to provide a lot of these services as APIs through their Google Cloud services, right? So analyzing big data, trying to get, AI to find trends, machine learning, all this stuff is what Google wants to monetize also through Google Cloud. All right, Jesse Mather-Moore says, what's your take on Elon singling out Google as a company whose potential most scares him? Yeah, I think Elon is scared of Google because of their AI prowess. They're basically the undisputed, in a sense, like kind of like company that's focused so much on AI, and they hold so much of the AI talent, and they spend so much money on just processing on, like, a lot of Google servers are like, used to, really push their AI and their AI ventures. I think Elon sees this, and he has a lot of respect for DeepMind and just what they're doing in terms of their skills with AI. And that's one of the reasons why I think Elon started, right, OpenAI with Sam Altman. However, over time, right, the whole OpenAI partnership kind of, just fell apart. And I think Elon, and this is my speculation, I think Elon really thought that a small group of people, like, under 50 people, max under 100 people, could really just, with the best minds in AI, can really kind of be a counter force to Google's AI innovations, and can really kind of democratize AI in a sense, right? However, I think with Sam Altman, he started to see like, hey, this isn't a sustainable business just to try to find funding, right? Kind of nonprofit funding to spend $50 million or even $100 million per year, right, to fund this open AI. And he started to say, hey, we need to make this sustainable. And to compete with Google, we need not just the best AI talent, we need a ton of money, and we need to invest in a ton of, right, infrastructure and cloud, just like computing and all this stuff, so we can have a chance, right? I think that's where Elon kind of just like, I think, had conflict, I think, with Sam and the whole culture, and just kind of backed off of that and decided, hey, he's going to invest more into Neuralink as kind of maybe the counterweight to Google. But anyways, yeah, these ethical questions, like some of these companies are so big, like Microsoft and Amazon and Google, and you also have to ask, like, oh, what if these companies start working with the government to start, infringing on our privacy? And this is already a big issue that's starting to happen. And you have to ask yourself, as an investor, is this something you want to get involved with? And where is your limit, right? Where is the line? And some of these companies, like Microsoft and Amazon, they're much more inclined, right, to work with the government, to give the government technology, and for the government to do whatever, than some other companies are. All right, lastly, is investing in Google the best way to invest in SpaceX? Yeah, Google, again, I shared, has such a small percent of SpaceX that, and you're buying Google at such a big valuation, $920 billion, right? And their portion of SpaceX is probably worth like, you know what, 1 billion or $2 billion, right? Or something. And so 2 billion out of 900 billion, that's like what, less than one. No, yeah, that's like point something percent, right, of Google's value is in SpaceX. So I don't think it's the best way to invest in SpaceX. SpaceX, either you can be an accredited investor. You can check out what that means and invest, I think, at least about $250,000. You can go into some type of special purpose vehicles that some companies have set up to invest in SpaceX. If that's something you're interested, you can look into it. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. This is part 2 on my kind of video on Google, and it's expanded kind of not just from Google but into, you know, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, etc. And it's kind of expanding into a deeper dive into what these antitrust actions are, what they mean, what the possible scenarios going forward are, and in the bigger kind of retrospective picture, it has dampened my view on Google in the short term to medium, meaning over the next 1 or 2 years, do I really want to sit through kind of all this FUD and all this chaos and drama of them going through antitrust action and lawsuits in the government and all the media up and down and just all that uncertainty? And do I really want to be following this like day by day, really trying to have an edge, right? Which, you know, it's hard to have an edge when, right, with these big cases, these big hedge funds with billions of dollars, they have people already talking and already infiltrated in some ways, right? All of the legal camps, right? In both sides. And so I don't really have an advantage, and that's a tough thing. So I think in the bigger picture, I'm less excited. I think these business models like Google, like Facebook, even Apple and Microsoft have amazing potential. They're amazing, stable kind of growth companies. I don't think these antitrust actions are going to doom these companies in any way. I just think that they could be short term, right? And over the next 1 or 2 years, kind of speed bumps. If the government goes really extreme, starts to break up these companies or give huge kind of restrictions, then yes, this could hamper the profit growth and their abilities going forward. So all this stuff is kind of wait and see and have an open mind. Continue to research. That's my philosophy. I'll continue to research, continue to learn, trust the process, right? As I continue to learn and look and seek for what I'm after, right? Then, yeah, I'll continue to grow as an investor in that process. All right. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. It helps get the word out. Add a comment. Let me know what you think about Google, Facebook, Amazon. Who's the first company to get broken up or to really, you know, get what are the possible kind of action that you think? Am I missing some scenarios, right, in antitrust action? I'd love to hear from you guys, and we'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks. Bye.